The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello and welcome to the Remington Park handicapping session presented by Daily Racing Form and Remington Park Racing and Casino. I'm your host, Peter Thomas Fornatale, back with you, excited to talk about Remington, a track where a lot of new things are happening between Daily Racing Form and Remington Park, including shows like this. I'm joined by two very special guests returning to the program from Daily Racing Form. She is the Mid-South correspondent and handicapper, and her analysis is appearing daily on Remington Park Racing Days in DRF, also available via drf.com. She's Mary Rampellini. Mary, how are you tonight?
Hi, Pete. How are you tonight?
Excellent, excellent. Very happy to get to be working with you again, Mary, and also happy to introduce our next guest, who I have yet to have the pleasure of working with, but I've admired his work from afar. He wrote a book I'll tell you about in a couple of minutes that I've been eager to read since its publication. He's an award-winning racing analyst and the Remington Park TV host as well, Chris Kotulak. Chris, how are you tonight?
Peter, doing well. Thanks for having me on. At the top of the show, you had two special guests. I don't know how special I am, although Nick Hines used to call me Special K on TVG, but I can assure you, you have someone special with Mary Rampellini. In the decades I've known her, I have yet to hear anyone say anything negative about her. So she holds the bar very high for everybody involved in the game covering horse racing.
That's hard in any walk of life, let alone horse racing. Kind and deserved words for Mary Rampellini. I mentioned the book.
Thank you, Chris.
I mentioned the book
Sure.
you wrote, Chris. It's called Jack from Grit to Glory, about the life and times of Jack Van Berg. You've been kind enough to offer to our webinar listeners and viewers tonight a chance to win a copy of that book. Later in the hour, we're going to have you read a trivia question. If folks have the answer to that question, they can then reach out to me. I'll give my email at the appointed time, and folks can respond and have a chance to win the book. So that's a very nice thing you're doing, and we appreciate it very much. Before we get into discussing the Remington Park card for tomorrow night, I just wanted to ask you guys some general questions about Remington. It's a track I'm very interested in playing. It's nice as an East Coast racing fan to have the opportunity to play a night track, to reach out and do something a little different. I've found over the course of my handicapping career, it can be really helpful in general, sometimes to take a look at a new circuit and get into back to the fundamentals and away from all the things you think you know about the circuit you play every day, and reach out to something new. And there's a few questions I have anytime I'm approaching a new circuit, and I thought, who better than you two to help me along? The first question I have for you guys is about jockeys, and I'll start with you, Chris. One thing I like to identify when looking at a new circuit is, who are the aggressive riders? Who are the riders who are likely to put their mounts in a position going forward? Riders you may, if not actually upgrade every horse they're on, at least pay a little bit of extra attention when they're in the saddle. What would you say, Chris? Who are the senders at Remington?
Well, back in my days of calling races at Louisiana Downs, my knee-jerk reaction would have been Ronald Ardwan, known as the King down there in Louisiana, and Mary knows plenty about that. Nowadays, I would have to say it's jockey Ramon Vasquez, and a lot of that has to do, and I say that not because he's some sort of a reckless, haphazard rider, but because many of the live horses nowadays are front runners, and jockeys need to get out there and get into position. And I feel that he is very aggressive. He rides both defensively and offensively. And I would have to think that if he wants to challenge you and put one out there on the front end and make you come catch him, that's the way he would go, even if it was a horse that maybe isn't a directly to the front sort of a horse. Also, if it's a Danny Caldwell horse owned and trained by Federico Villafranco, maybe they're dropping one in class, then they'd say, look, come beat us. We're dropping down here. You've got to do something to chase after us. So I would say Ramon Vasquez is the first jockey that comes to mind here at Remington.
Two good ideas to be paying attention to. Mary, how about on the training side? Are there any particular conditioners whose horses you upgrade at Remington?
Well, trainer Steve Asmussen has been very dominant at Remington for many years, not only as a trainer, but a lot of the horses he owns. He's had He's had success winning owner titles at the track before. I would look for Carl Broberg to have a strong meet. Talking to him recently, he anticipates that this meet will be a stronger one than he had a year ago. A year ago, he had just lost his wife, and the timing of the meet, it was just a very difficult time for him personally. So he's very upbeat and very optimistic about the Remington season. You certainly have trainer Federico Villafranco with owner Danny Caldwell, who's a perennial leading owner at Remington. They have a very strong barn there. I like Lynn Cleverad's a horse a stable I like to pay a lot of attention to down at Remington. You do have a very nice mix, and of course, Brett Calhoun. You have a strong contingent and a long list of trainers from Lone Star, but you have a lot of Midwest barns coming in. So it's a great mix. You've got Canterbury horses, Prairie Meadows horses. You've got horses coming in from Texas. There's Oklahoma stalwarts, guys like Roger Engel that stay at Will Rogers, stay in Oklahoma throughout the year. So a lot of mix to sort through when you handicap, which makes it a lot of fun.
Absolutely. That's something that I've certainly think over the years have seen add value to those willing to do work on the handicapping side when it's not the same horses running against each other over and over again, and you have a more diverse horse population to choose from and figuring out what's going on from the different circuits. I'm showing up on the screen now for those watching the 2017 Thoroughbred season at Remington. Folks can go to the RemingtonPark.com website for more info on that. But we are going to dive in right now to this Friday night card of racing. We kick things off with a mile maiden claimer. Chris, we'll start with you. Did you have any strong opinions on this race?
Well, I will say this. Here's the angle. The two-horse Euromaster is a son of Euro Ears. Here's a stallion that really became popular along the Red River Valley, either side, north Oklahoma, south being Texas. And he was campaigned as a stallion by former AQHA past president James Helzer. And obviously he was a tremendous sprinter. He won the Paddle Bryan or the Bing Crosby, one of the sprint stakes out there at Del Mar, and then the Thanksgiving or the Fairgrounds handicap, a sprint or two down there in New Orleans. Went over to Dubai as well. Anyway, his speed is passed along to his get, both with quarter horses and thoroughbreds. Euro Ears was producing quarter horse winners for the last couple of years. But Helzer has found a place where he can get these horses working fast, and they have already popped up and won already this meet. And we know Euro Ears, we know speed, and I think the two-horse Euromaster might just slip away and steal the race. I have to say this, the one horse sticking with the guys made my horses to watch list in the very first night of racing. I keep lists of horses and comments for something they've done on the racetrack, good, bad, or otherwise. And my comments were long, steady advance from the half-mile pole. Anybody knows that a horse that is being asked already at the half-mile pole usually might not have anything to the end, but he just kept right on going. So against a horse I have on my horses to watch list, I'm going to pick the 2 over the 1 in the opening race, guys. Gang, Mary, Peter.
Let me ask you about that. How wedded are you when you're making a horse to watch list, Chris? How much do you go with what your eyes saw in the first place to put that horse on the list versus going back and doing some traditional handicapping?
Well, mostly it's what I see right then and there, but I do a lot of other stuff here at the racetrack during racing hours, what I call Bob Barker or Monty Hall sort of stuff, and sometimes that will distract me from maybe seeing a horse in the post grade as well as I would like to, or even sometimes watching the race, which doesn't really, that's not the way I like to go. So then I will go back and look at some replays, but I'll tell you what, I was never a better handicapper when I was calling races, because you watch a race entirely differently, I think, than when you otherwise, because you're calling it, and things just sunk into my head a lot better and made a greater impression, I think, than they do nowadays. But by all means, if I see something on the racetrack, I'll make a note of it and then go back the next day and enter it into the computer and wait for the horse to run back, and then have to decide if I'm going to pick the horse or not.
Well, for the folks watching live, we were just talking about the first. That's the first race tonight, right, Chris? On the
Yes.
Thursday evening card. So that's some excellent information to use in real time for folks watching the the replay of the show, which can be accessed at drf.com/YouTube, you're going to have to go now probably back in the chart and see what happened. I think probably, Chris, if you've worked ahead, we should look ahead to the Friday night card to give folks a little bit of chance watching the replay here. But still, I always like a little bonus coverage, so that's beautiful stuff. Mary, why don't you start
I do have my Friday racing done, so we're good there.
Excellent. Mary, why don't you start us off with the opener on tomorrow night's card?
Sure. Well, a lot of nice insights from Chris there on a couple of different subjects. Moving into Friday, Pete, I went with the horse on the outside, Sooner the Better. I'm judging this horse, this filly, a little more on her form from Will Rogers Downs. I'm going to kind of draw a line through that last start and kind of hope she might recapture some of that better form. She's going to go 2 turns, and I think she gets some pedigree support for that the first time, and also helping her. She's dropping into a maiden claiming spot for the first time. So that's kind of why I went in that direction. I think a horse that's proven around 2 turns, at least to the level you can be proven as a maiden, is Classy Notes. You know, she's run second and third a few times at the distance.
Excellent. We got a lot of ground to cover and about 25 minutes in which to do it. So I think we should move straight on to the second race here, where we're looking at some 2-year-olds. Mary, we'll keep it with you for a quick thought on the second race tomorrow night.
Yeah, kind of the same story, Pete, a little bit from my top choice here, Fight and Talk. This is a Talkett horse that is coming out a very quick stakes race at Prairie Meadows. So I like that he's moving back into an overnight spot. And the last time he ran in an overnight spot, he ran a big race in his debut, winning off by 6. I think if he duplicates that effort, he will be very difficult to contain in this spot. So I like that horse a lot. Hopefully he'll run back to that race.
Potentially a short price single there. Chris, what are your thoughts? Is it Fight and Talk's race to lose?
Yes, I guess so. I don't like to pick horses that just ran clunkers such as that one, but based on what he did in his debut, I think so. The races, I call it the Oklahoma Texaco non-winners of 2. All the horses in the race are either Oklahoma bred, Texas bred, or New Mexico breds in there. But as Mary hit it, I'm going to use that horse as a single. And it looked like I'm 3, 4, 5, 1 are my numbers in there. But if you need to find a single and a pick 5, then that's the one I would recommend along with Mary.
Excellent. Let's move along to the third race on tomorrow night's card, back in the claiming ranks here. Chris, where did you end up in this one?
I've got another single, and it's the one horse in Lucky Number Ones, who does take a class drop. It is a suspicious class drop, you'd think, but that's the way the claiming game is played, much like a poker game. The class drop sure makes this one a real live runner. She's a daughter of Include out of a Mazel Trick mare. She worked a bullet work, and she's a Kentucky bred. And if you get beyond her recent 7th place finish where she didn't run at all, she had a host of good races prior to that. So there's my, potentially second single in tomorrow's pick 5.
Excellent. Mary, is this dropper one that's on your radar as well, or were you looking in a different direction?
Yeah, Pete, generally as a class handicapper, I characterize myself that way. I do like a horse, based on the company they've kept. And since this horse has been running against steeper Lucky Number Ones, she is my top choice. But I do fear Sister Ashley a little bit in here. I'm looking back at, the fact that she is a winner at this distance, and she's going to add blinkers here. And I think she'll be sharp going back to 2 turns off the 7/8 race. So she's a horse that interests me and actually scares me a little, maybe getting the better of me. And then I think Native Wonder's a horse you've got to pay a little bit of attention to in here for trainer Lynn Kleberad.
Let me ask you another one of these general Remington handicapping questions. How important is it, Mary, to have local form on the track? Do you consider Remington a particular horse for course track? It seems that some ovals more than others lend themselves to repeat winners.
That's a really good question. I do not feel that way. I feel that way stronger about a track like Oaklawn, which might be a deeper, more laboring track. I do not feel that way about Remington for either its main track or it's turf course. I feel like horses will come in and run their race. I don't think that you necessarily have to be, affiliated or have experience over the course perhaps to pop.
Oklahoma breds take center stage in race 4. We have a pick 3 starting here. Chris, what are your thoughts on the 4th race tomorrow night?
4th race tomorrow night, and I'll get that right tomorrow, not tonight. Well, I've got some marks next to the 8-horse Sweet Talking Candyman. Here's a horse with some good form and has already won this season. And talking about angles, last year it was very strong. Horses coming from Prairie Meadows to Remington, I thought their form would hold up very well, and I would give them a nod over horses coming from Lone Star. I'm not so sure how that's going this year, but it seems to be picking up where it left off, because Sweet Talking Candyman had a 3rd place finish at Prairie Meadows last year and then was able to come on and get the victory. So I'm going to go back and default to the 8-horse there in the 4th race. My numbers will be 8, 6, 5, and 1. But I do respect unfortunately Prairie Meadows has some short fields now and then, but they do have some quality and some quality horsemen on top of that.
I love angles like that. You see it sometimes in very surprising ways where certain horses from a certain circuit, for whatever reason, will do well. So that's a good angle to pay attention to. Mary, how do you see this one?
Well, I went with the rail horse, Pete Fusaichi Chan. I feel that horse just is coming into a good race. I'm just kind of watching his form. He seems to be on an uptick, on an upswing. So that's kind of why I landed there over a horse, Just Dude, which is kind of a class play. I think if you look back at this horse's form, he's been in some quality races, comparatively speaking, to the others in the field. He's faced some nice horses, a horse like Marty's Wimbledon. He's only beaten 2 lengths by that type of a horse. That's a stakes kind of quality horse in his day. And so he'd be a class type play for me. And Sweet Talking Candyman is in my mix for sure.
All right, 3 ideas from Mary there. We'll move on to a straight maiden for 2-year-old fillies in the 5th race. Mary, we'll keep it with you.
This was a very difficult race for me to decide on here. I was debating back and forth between I Think I Got This and Champagne Bling. And even though Champagne Bling has finished in front of I Think I Got This a couple times, I did really like the work pattern of I Think I Got This, and I do like her pedigree a lot. She is the first foal from Dill or No Dill, and that was a filly that defeated male rivals in the Clever Trevor at Remington a few years back for trainer Joe Pedalino, who has this filly, I Think I Got This. So I've really liked this filly since she debuted, and I really debated strongly, but I did end up putting Champagne Bling on top, in part because she's finished in front of that rival the last few times, and she also seems to be, just moving forward with each start with the experience of the races. But this was a tough race for me to sort through. Champagne Bling is a full sister to a 2-year-old stakes winner of a year ago named I'm a Wild Bling. So there's pedigree there. And I thought the Lady Melania Candy Ride horse was an interesting horse, but maybe that's the kind of horse that might want some more distance. But I'm looking forward to seeing that horse debut.
Interesting using the formulator tools I was just demonstrating, where you can click on the pedigrees of the sire and dam and look at their PPs, as well as get some relevant sibling information. That Joe Pedalino had the dam when she won the stakes race that Mary mentioned. Pretty interesting stuff there. Chris, where did you end up in this one?
Well, I will see Mary Rampellini's pedigree research. I won't raise her because I don't know that mine's any better than hers. Hers is pretty good. But Lady Melania purchased for $180,000. She's a Kentucky bred. Danny Pish has 28% win rate. But here's the pedigree angle. That damn Lady Kierkegaard, while she was only one of 12, she did earn over $114,000. This, however, is her first full. And, we don't know what she's going to produce on the racetrack. But I am a sucker for horses that seem to be working well. Mary says she's a class play. That's her angle. And for me, I'm more of a form and a trip handicapper, for better or worse. Who knows if one angle is better or not? But that's been the way I've buttered my bread. And typically I do like to see a horse start. I don't usually pick first-time starters, but I have to add this. Champagne Bling, the comment, the 4-horse Champagne Bling, I was watching the replay there, and it says taken up at the 7/16 pole. At the 7/16 pole, which is just inside the half-mile pole, I thought the horse just steadied slightly. So at first I thought, whoa, what's this here? And I looked and I didn't see a whole bunch there. So splitting hairs, I went with the 8 over the 4.
Interesting. That kind of trip work.
Oh, but I said the 8, and I forgot my top pick is the Ron Moquette horse. Right. You can tell what day I've done a few days of handicapping here. Tonight is Thursday. I'm working on Fridays and talking about Friday. Look, Ron Moquette has come in already and swooped in and got the candy. He's got a chance to win a pair coming up tomorrow night with the 8-horse Castle Ridge in the 5th race, and then later on the card, as we will get to it if I remember what night we're talking about.
Your spread looking like 8-5-4 there, Chris. Is that right?
That's it. Yeah, you figured that out through all my scramble articulation.
That's an
You're a
interesting
good code
race.
doctor.
It's an interesting race, and the kind of trip work you were mentioning, where you can add something to what one sees in the chart, the formulator program I'm demonstrating through the handicapping session software here. You can actually physically put that note right in there, so then every time the horse comes back and runs, it's not like you have to watch the tape again. You can have your own note embedded in there. One of the reasons people like Formulator so much. We're going to move on to race 6. We're sticking with the maiden ranks this time, going the Oklahoma bred route. Do you have a strong opinion in here, Chris?
My top pick, and this is a single again, is the 7-horse Kermit, the son of Curlin. He looked every bit of the part of that when I saw him in the walking ring here at Remington on August 25th. He was behind the 8 ball, being asked to go 6 furlongs. He was made a favorite on that day, and I know I picked him on top, but that was his first race back since April. He probably needed that one, and he got it. And now that they go 2 turns, something really unforeseen, I think, is going to have to pop up there. Although the 6-horse Vic's Vision may provide that, in that he is a front runner that maybe just could go on out there to the front end. If it's a pace that doesn't soften anybody up, then maybe the 6 could outlast. So I think the 7 is the one. I have to say something about this jockey, Alfredo Triana, who rides the 6-horse Vic's Vision. He's a young guy, and this past quarter horse meet at Remington, he was riding a number of quarter horse winners, and he was going back and forth to Fauner Park in Grand Island, Nebraska, which is where I called my first race back in 1986.
Cool.
I'm a Nebraska bred myself, and I was watching him. He is a very talented rider, obviously with both breeds, and he was up at Arapahoe Park for the summertime. Now that they're finished, he's down here to ply his trade. And I'll keep a good eye on him, because if there's a live horse, he will take care of that horse and put him in a good spot. But the 7 is the one to beat.
Good note. Mary, what do you think? Is this Kermit's race to lose?
Yes. I mean, he was my best bet, and for many of the same reasons Chris just mentioned, particularly stretching back out to 2 turns. And just, on a pedigree point, this horse is a half to Magnum, grade 2 winner, won the Lone Star Park Handicap as well. So he is a horse that I do feel is very strong in here. And I did have Vic's Vision as a second choice. The race he comes out of, the race he was 4th in last time, has had 3 next out winners. 2 of those horses finished behind him and came back and won. And that's kind of how I saw it. For me, that was kind of a strong horse in here. Kermit, kind of a best bet kind of pick for me.
And potentially a single to start off the guaranteed $40,000 pick 4 that'll be beginning there. So definitely something interesting to consider as we move on to the 7th race. Mary, is this another race that narrows down, or a race where you might look for a few extra horses as you continue along with this late pick 4?
I felt strongly about the horse Rary that I picked in here, but I do think that this is a very strong field of older horses, and I can't be single-minded in this race. I will say this is the kind of race I look at to maybe possibly produce a starter or 2 for the Governor's Cup coming up September 24th at Remington. I do know, talking to some trainers, that FJ Uncle Vic is the type of horse that could turn up later in the year in the Hall of Fame Stakes at Retama Park. and that Social Misfit is the type of horse that could turn up in the Gold Cup for Louisiana breds later in the year at Delta Downs. So these are some stakes quality horses that have stakes credentials or stakes aspirations. Makes it a good race. Rory, when he ran in January against Shotgun Cowboy, he ran a big second against that horse. Shotgun Cowboy was coming off a long layoff that day, but that was a very impressive effort. And, this horse has just run against quality Rory in his races. He's going back to 2 turns off a 7-8 start at Saratoga. And like Chris had said, Ron Moquette has come in and been effective right off the bat here at Remington. Dan, the go-to man, is another horse I liked in here. He just seems to fit very well. Again, he's got consistency, strong buyer figures, and just looks the part for me. And I thought FJ Uncle Vic could get a piece in here. Again, it's a very competitive race to me, but I do like Prairie a lot in here.
And that FJ Uncle Vic 20-1 on the morning line, maybe the price to juice up the gimmicks. Chris, where did you land in here?
Peter, this is the other Ron Moquette horse that we spoke of. Mary's top pick, the 5-horse Brary. Brary recently finished 5th after a 5-month layoff. That was at Saratoga. The horse that finished 2nd and came back and won an allowance race by 3 lengths. That's Warriors Club. So definitely a nice company line. And just to add one more to what Mary said, we've got some solid horses that know how to get to the winner's circle. Social Misfit is 14 of 53 lifetime and 14 thirds. How about that? And if you just look at his last 4 races, that's the kind of racehorse he is. One race, he comes from 10 lengths out of it to win it. Other race, he's going 2 turns over the turf. Another race, he's going that testing 7 furlongs. He's a racehorse, and he seems to like racing, and I always like that sort of a horse to bet on. So the 10 will be my second pick there in tomorrow night's 7th race.
Several good ideas there, and yeah, that sort of toughness and consistency that you see in a horse like that. Those are definitely factors that no matter what your handicapping approach is, you might want to take an extra look at. The 8th race is our featured race. It is the Remington Park Turf Sprint, $50,000 stake. Chris, we'll keep it with you for your thoughts on the big one tomorrow night.
Well, one thing to know, it is Oklahoma breds, as you mentioned, but in this field, there are 6 horses with 0 turf wins. So, you could kind of look into that and think, all right, well, who is maybe a horse that is of lesser quality or class, but really likes the turf would be at an advantage. The 3-horse Mr. N will be my top pick. He is a speedy little horse. He's run here at Remington before. He's never run over the turf course at Remington. The one time he did go over the turf, it was a route race. It was a 2-turn race. And, he didn't have much left. He's not really a distance horse. I think he spelled that out for us. So with speed and an inside post position, I like his chances. Luis Quinones, he's a journeyman jockey. His, I would say he maybe has retirement on his mind within the next 3 to 5 years. One thing that I think he has held up and is very good at is keeping a horse together on the front end, break on top and just hold them together, not necessarily shipping him right to the front, but if the horse has speed, he can nurture that horse's speed along. And I think you'll see a good example of that with Mr. N tomorrow. I do pick Chestnut Johnny, the 12 horse at 8-1 is my second pick. Drowning in Diamonds at 20-1 is my third pick, and the 11 Stolen Glory at 20-1. So I've got some prices tomorrow night in the Remington Turf Sprint. I'm 3-12, 1, and 11, and the weather is supposed to be exactly as it is tonight for about the next 2 weeks. So we'll expect the race to be on the turf.
Excellent. That's always very good news. Mary, who's your selection in the feature?
Well, I'm not deviating much from the direction Chris went. I do like Mr. N over Chestnut Johnny. Pete, Mr. N's a horse that trainer Terry O said he tried to get on the grass to turf sprint at Lone Star, but those races ended up being rained off. It didn't offend them. The horse was pretty accomplished on the dirt, and he went out and did his thing. But they do look forward to getting a line on him on the grass. He's by Mr. Neitlinger, who was a multiple Grade 3 winner on the turf, a turf sprinter of note. So there's a lot of reason to think this horse will take to this turf sprint trip. He's got a lot of speed too. On a personal note, in a sense, Terry Oaf was the co-owner of Tara's Angel, and Jay Privman had been telling the story of Tara's Angel, who won the Juvenile Fillies Turf out at Del Mar over Labor Day weekend. She is named for Terrio's daughter, Tara, who died a few weeks after the filly won her debut at Lone Star Park. He sent her out to Del Mar, and she's out there with trainer Dallas Keene. So kind of a special week for Terrio to see Tara's Angel win a stake at Del Mar. Maybe he can keep that rolling, that stakes momentum rolling with Mr. N. We sure know Tara is going to be with Mr. N on Friday night. Chestnut Johnny, he's a turf sprint specialist, and that's really why I like him. And he's coming out of a key race. A couple of the horses he ran against last time out came back and won optional claimers at Canterbury with pretty decent numbers, an 80 and a 79 buyer each.
You can see, clicking on that race in Formulator, you can see the italicized names indicating that those horses came back to win. You can click on the horses to see the specifics of it. But some very good ideas in there from the panel. And with that, we'll move on to the nightcap tomorrow, the pay leg. Mary, how are we getting out in this other special weight baby race?
Oh, more babies. This is fun. That's what's been fun about. I've enjoyed so far at the Remington. To me, it seems like we've had a real high percentage of young horses right off the bat, of fun maidens, 2-year-olds. Bully Doss, is a horse that seems to be coming into a good race. He's moving back to dirt. He's run well at this 2-turn trip, but on the grass. And, he's a half to Promise Me Silver. She was a grade 3 winner on the dirt. And he's a full to Bully Good, who was a stakes winner at 2 turns on the grass. So he's got, some pedigree reasoning. He's got, consistent form, and he seems to be coming into the maiden win pretty soon. Kingsville's an interesting horse. I thought he ran a big race to go 2 turns. First time out of the box, ran 3rd in a nice race, finished right behind Bully Doss, and certainly can move forward. He's got a couple siblings that were graded stakes placed and won a fair amount of races. They were winners, and that's nice to see. That mare gets winners. Those horses win, and win often, and that's always something I like to see in pedigree.
That's a great point, Mary, and I think something that the market doesn't always emphasize enough. When you can find a mare who has dropped several runners, and it almost doesn't matter who the sire is. This mare produces runners, and it's something. Again, using various tools, you can dig and find that information, and even better when you can point it out in your analysis in DRF. Chris, I know you've got to go to work soon. Let's hear your thoughts on this last race, and then let's talk for a second about your book. But first off, who do you like in the nightcap?
Well, I think it might be between the Danny Pish horses. This is the one race I haven't even finalized yet. So I like the 3-horse Kingsville, maybe the 8-horse Bully Doss. But I have to say this, the 7-horse Payday 2, every year I get a little barn tour from the CR Trout barn back there on the backside, barn B1 it is. And it's amazing how many of these horses come back and win. And he's just sort of just saying one thing about one and one of the next. Well, Payday 2 was one of those horses, the son of a young, new, popular stallion, Jimmy Creed.
Sure,
and so maybe for a price, I'll just throw out there the 9th race, the 7-horse Payday 2 could be a horse that I know I'll have Payday 2 in my top 4 picks.
That makes sense. I mean, between how hot the barn has been, and there was a lot of buzz up at the Saratoga even about how well the Jimmy Creeds have looked and how they've been running. So that makes sense. All right, before we let you go, do you have a trivia question for us? And the winner, if there's more than one winner, I'll do a drawing. But otherwise, we'll send a copy of Jack from Grit to Glory out to the person who can answer the following question.
Sure, and I'll send a book to you so you can read it, Peter. And anybody that doesn't partake in the contest or wants the book, they can go to Amazon.com or the book website, Jack from Grit to Glory. I was going to make this the trivia question, but I won't, but it's still a fun story. Everybody knows that well, not everybody knows. That's the problem I'm having with this trivia, because for many people, Jack Vanberg is just this guy that trains 20-1, 31 long shots in Southern California. Do you know that this year was the first year he's gone over the $1 million mark since the year 2000? I'm very proud to say I know the book has helped him get his life and his training back in order, and leaving California had a lot to do with that as well. But I'm very proud of what Jack is doing right now. He got fresher horses, and that means a whole bunch. But Gate Dancer wore a hood, and he was known as being a rogue, although Jack says he was kind of a sweet horse to be around. But one time on the way up to New York, they pulled over and bought a woman. They went into an X-rated shop so that Jack could buy a special kind of he bought a bra so he could use as heel cups to wrap the ankles of the horse. So I wasn't sure how I would work that into a trivia question, but I'll go with this for a trivia question. And this might be hard, but I'm trying to find one that people just can't Google and figure out. And if it's too tough, Peter, I'll just let you decide who gets the book. But there was a Gate Dancer who finished second in the Preakness and had that thrilling finish, three-way finish in the first ever Breeders' Cup Classic. He was involved in two significant races at Exarban in Omaha. And the first was called the Main Event. And then the next year, that same horse that he faced, they ran against each other again. And it was called the Rematch. So the Main Event was the Omaha Gold Cup. The rematch was the Cornhusker Handicap. And Gate Dancer beat this horse both times. Maybe the correct answer could be name that horse or name that trainer that Jack faced off against on each occasion. And I had to just include Exarban as part of the trivia because that was my favorite track. I used to ride my bike there. That's where I first started working on the racetrack, cleaning stalls at 5 o'clock in the morning. So there it is.
You mentioned
name the horse or the trainer that was involved in the Main Event or the rematch versus Jack Vanberg's Gate Dancer.
I love it. And you mentioned the Nebraska connection, so it's the perfect question. Folks can email their answers to me at podcast@drf.com. That's the email of the DRF Players Podcast, of which I'm also the host. If you enjoyed the show tonight, a lot of handicapping content on there you might enjoy. Chris, I know you have to go. Mary and I are going to stick for a minute and look at a question or two from the audience. But why don't we let you go and do your job? And thank you very much for coming on the show tonight. The book, Jack, From Grit to Glory. Try to win it or check it out on Amazon or go to the book's website and get more information there. Thanks again, my friend.
Nice working with you, Mary. Peter, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. And a shout out to Ryan, who I know is watching in the Edmond area, who is listening to your show tonight, and he's a big follower. So keep up the good work, Peter.
Fabulous stuff. Thank you very much.
Good night, Chris.
All right, Mary.
Thanks, Mary. See you at the races.
We'll hang for just
See you there.
We'll hang for just another minute. Let's see. It doesn't look like we have any questions that need dealing with. There were some people asking about the first race and the info there. Yeah, that was obviously from tonight's card, the Thursday card, and the rest of the show dealt with Friday. If you want to go back and watch any of this, you can do so, drf.com/YouTube. Mary, I just want to thank you again for going out of your way and coming on and offering your analysis, and remind folks that you can be found every racing day at Remington, your analysis in the pages of, I guess, the Mid-South editions of the Daily Racing Form paper and also drf.com. Thanks for coming on, Mary.
Pete, thank you so much for having me, and thank you for your interest in my market, Remington Park being one of those big tracks that I cover.
Oh, it's a cool one, and I'm looking forward to paying it more attention, and excited by the DRF Remington partnership. Good stuff all the way around. I want to thank our sponsor, Remington Park. Most of all, I want to thank everybody for tuning in live tonight, and also those who are accessing the replay. We really appreciate your support. You've been watching a handicapping session produced by drf.com.